Welcome to the TFD Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Sullivan, and this is the show where we break down popular science into easily digestible and actionable information to give you the blueprint to be a high performer in your life. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Sinead Roberts. Dr. Roberts has a Ph.D. from University College London, studying cell growth and fat metabolism, and is the director and owner of Feed, Fuel, Perform. Dr. Roberts and her team work with an array of athletes from recreational to elite, and she herself is an avid athlete. Recently, Dr. Roberts has launched a new research project in conjunction with the University of Westminster, where she will be assessing the physiology of concurrent training in CrossFit. In normal people terms, that means she is trying to better understand what happens in the body during CrossFit training when there are both endurance and strength components in order to develop more individualized training regimes. If you're a strength sport athlete, then this is the podcast for you. Let's get to it. All right, we are live for another episode of the TFD Performance Podcast. We're doing a very impromptu thing that we've never done on the podcast before. I've brought in a third member to join us, but I am joined all the way from the UK by Dr. Sinead Roberts. Dr. Roberts, thanks for coming back on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Loz, for everyone listening at home, I literally called Loz 2 minutes ago and said, jump on this podcast, and she didn't even bat an eye, and she's here. So Loz, thanks for jumping on.
Never say no, no worries. Thanks for having me, guys.
I didn't even tell her what it was about. I bet she thought she was in trouble. Do you think
you
were in trouble?
Yeah, for sure. I was like, oh no, what have I done?
You misspelled this on the meal plan. No, what we're going to be talking about, I'm sure everyone is familiar with Dr. Roberts. We had a really cool podcast. It was probably, 2 years ago?
I looked up this morning. Yeah, it was September 2020.
So it was in the thick of COVID.
Mental.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a long time ago. How's everything been getting on from your end with COVID? Obviously, it was mental over there where you guys were.
Yeah, touch wood. I mean, yeah, a year. We've been out of it for a year now. So yeah, touch wood. Everything's like back to normal. No masks, no nothing, no testing, no requirement to quarantine if you have COVID. So yeah, it's moved back to normal. What's it like over there now? Have you guys got any restrictions still, or are you done?
I think we're pretty much all done. Like at the airport, you still have to wear your face mask. And if you go overseas, like certain areas, you have to get a COVID test beforehand. But at the moment, because we're coming into winter, we've got like a big flu happening. So it's like, yeah, that's kind of the big problem that we're all dancing with now. But well, if it's not COVID, it's something else. But anyway, Dr. Roberts, can you give everyone just a quick refresher, give us a little bit of a background? I don't think it's possible to give a quick background with everything you've done, but as quick as we can.
Yeah, jump all over the place. It's probably the summary of me. So my background's cellular research. So I used to look at how basically metabolism, but at the level of the cell. So like pure research, no humans. Did that for a while, took a curveball and went into corporate world for a little while. Started CrossFit, realized that life and nutrition kind of is more complex in an applied setting. Was always more interested. My research always looked at the extremes of kind of when you push cells or living things to the extreme, how did they respond metabolically? So ultimately that got me back into being like, I want to actually do sports nutrition and work with people applying the principles, and then ultimately work my way back to research and kind of academia on the side. And that's kind of where we're at now. So I've got a nutrition coaching business. So we work with everyone from recreational through to elite athletes. My focus is strength power sports, so weight making sports and CrossFit really. Others on my team work with more track and endurance type sports. And then I lecture, and post-COVID, now we're allowed to research humans again. And starting back into research projects, looking at, essentially CrossFit type responses to training.
That is a lot going on. How is everything going on Feed, Fuel, Perform? You didn't even give it a cheeky plug, so I'll give it for you. Feed, Fuel, Perform, if everyone is listening. How's everything going there?
I am terrible at marketing. It's good. It's really good fun. We've got a team of 4 of us now. And just still enjoying working with loads of different types of people. Mix of kind of got mixed more of the sort of recreational people with performance goals, or more around the behavior change coaching and kind of how people view food, seeing it as hopefully fun and fuel. and then through to the more elite athletes. So kind of how to tweak it to optimize performance, or at least minimize adverse impacts on performance during weight making. So yeah, it's good fun. We're lucky. We've got a good bunch of clients we work with. So yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to talk to you about your latest research, which is in CrossFit. Before we get into it, is that what you're training at the moment? Is that what you're really into at the moment, CrossFit?
Yes, although if you speak to any of the coaches or any of my friends, they'll say you don't really do CrossFit, you just kind of fluff around and see what looks fun for the day, which is probably more at some point. Yeah, at some point I will get back a goal and a structured training plan, but fluffing around is the current description of how I train. So yeah, a bit of everything, which I guess is CrossFit, just I don't do it in a very structured or sensible way.
And that's why I've got Loz to jump in on this podcast, who she is our resident strength and CrossFit expert that we use with all of our athletes. And she will, by a country mile, ask way better questions about this than what I will. But let's get straight into it. Let's talk about your research. Let's talk about what you've been having. You were saying that there was a little bit of delay with COVID and everything, but now that we can poke and prod humans again, you're back into it. Tell us about what's been happening with this research.
Yeah, so I mean, the original question was kind of, okay, what actually happens, or the big picture question is, okay, what actually happens at the level of the muscle in terms of signaling and responses acutely and chronically to CrossFit style training. So when I say CrossFit in this sense, I basically mean where you're trashing the body from all angles. So you've got heavy weights, you've got mechanical loading, you've got metabolic stress, both at a very high intensity and or over a prolonged period. You've got quite complex neuromuscular kind of coordination required if you've got gymnastics in there, and kind of what happens at the muscular level. So we know from CrossFit, everyone is getting fitter, faster, stronger because people are performing a lot better than they were sort of 10, 15 years ago. And we know obviously the training programs and the recovery protocols they're doing work for that. But that doesn't mean we know everything or they're the best that they can be, and we don't know why. There's a lot of everything we know is taken from what we understand about single discipline training, but we know from where research and just experience in the field that if you're combining heavy resistance training with, for example, endurance training or high intensity cardio work, you can get some interference in how fit you get with the two of them. And we don't even fully understand that at the moment when you're doing them on, say, two ends of a day or on different days, let alone thrown into the same carnage chaos type workout. And that's not to say that's what CrossFit is all the time. You know, you will do periodized training to focus on one or more elements, but you've still usually got some element of doing it all in there. And so if we can understand how the body responds to that acutely, we can hopefully manipulate training, nutrition, and recovery to get the fittest, fastest, strongest in response to that type of training as well. And also recognizing that every individual is slightly different in terms of their physiology and their exercise physiology. So, okay, the next level is then, okay, how do we need to adapt training, nutrition, other recovery aspects to the individual so that they become the fittest, fastest, strongest they can be. That is the massive big picture lifetime goal, of which at the moment we're observing how people respond to workouts and then hopefully taking the next step from there.
So is the goal of the research, Dr. Roberts, is it then you're trying to, like, on a physiological sense, like figure out what CrossFit is and then just see how people respond to it? That's kind of my idiot way of interpreting this?
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. Sorry, I just didn't go off on a tangent. But yeah, no, it's essentially that. Like, we want to see, okay, if someone is doing workout X, what is actually happening in their body? So my ultimate interest is what's happening in terms of within the muscle, what signaling is occurring, because the stress and the signals that occur in the muscle in response to training are kind of the first step to getting fitter, faster, stronger, because that's the signal that's kind of telling your body, well, this really hurts. Let's, adapt and build bigger muscles or whatever, or more energetic machinery so that the next time we do this, it's not quite as terrible. And we don't really know what that signaling looks like in in these kind of extreme, well, not extreme, but these kind of quite intense, heavy, long, high intensity CrossFit style workouts. So if we can figure out kind of almost like what that workout says to the body, we can figure out how do we get the body to best respond to it.
Exactly what I was going to ask you, Loz, is like, let's just, like, you train obviously a bunch. Describe for people listening, because I'm listening to this, my interpretation of the only CrossFit workouts I've ever done is like, I don't know what's going on in my body. Like, everything hurts. Like, I feel like it's like, I don't know what I'm working. Like, am I doing strength right now? My chest is about to explode. Like, I'm overheating. Like, every part of my body is sore. I've like got no strength to pull everything up. Like, Loz, can you just, like, you train every single day. Is there structure to this training? Like, when you go into a gym, like when I rocked up, I was like, this is just chaos. Like, this is just like what we do in fighting, like fight simulation, where it's meant to be just controlled, not even controlled, just chaos everywhere, and you're meant to adapt. Obviously, there's a bit more like structure in there. What's it like when you're rocking up to a gym? Just for people listening that are like, what are these guys talking about?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, like, obviously it depends, if you are following the gym's program or you're doing individual programming, because there's a lot of that kind of going on. But traditionally, most gyms just say, you rock up to a CrossFit class, you're going to do a strength component, whether that's, 20 minutes or something, maybe to build to a heavy squat, or it's a clean complex. So typically you'll start off the workout doing a strength component and or possibly a gymnastics section. So you could either follow that with maybe 10-minute pull-up EMOM, and then, you'll do a workout. And that could be 8 minutes or it could be 30 minutes. So when you were just explaining that before, I was thinking in my head, Murph, you're like, okay, we're putting these extremely long workouts. And for anyone that doesn't know what Murph is, it is one of the longer CrossFit WODs. And pretty much you start with a 1 mile run, and then you do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then another mile run. So it's one of the longer CrossFit workouts. So with your research, are you kind of putting everyone through the same type of a workout?
What we're doing, so this is very much kind of a very sort of baby step on that kind of bigger picture that I said. So what we're doing at the moment is observational. So we're first of all testing various aspects of an individual's exercise physiology. So we're looking at strength, we're looking at max strength, strength endurance, aerobic capacity, anaerobic capacity, and heart rate responses, and also substrate utilization, actually. So how they burn carbs and fats during exercise. So we're getting kind of all the data about them and body composition. And then we are getting them to do a CrossFit workout in 2 ways. So first of all, the workout has got heavy load in it. It's got gymnastics and it's got cardio. So it's got machines, it's got rowers, skis, and assault bike. And it's 20 minutes long, with the idea that it can't be total high intensity for 20 minutes because energy systems don't work like that. So it's kind of it's a grind in the context of CrossFit. Should probably caveat that when a CrossFitter says endurance work, they're not doing endurance work. Like 30 minutes is considered endurance in CrossFit, but like in the context of CrossFit, it's quite a long workout. So they do it with set weights and set reps on the gymnastics once. And then the second time they do the workout, or the first time we randomize the order, it's the same workout, except the weight and the number of reps on the gymnastics that they do is scaled to their maximum strength and capacity that we tested for those movements right back at the start as well. And the reason for doing it 2 ways is we want to see, okay, different people might respond differently when they're doing exactly the same workout. But if we're adjusting the workout to their individual capability, do the responses look more similar to each other?
Cool. You mentioned your measured like substrate utilization. That'll be really interesting because I think, there's so much research out there for a lot of sports, and Jordy and I at the moment are kind of delving into the endurance space. And I feel, there is quite a lot of good research and guidelines out there based on science. But when it comes to CrossFit, there's not much at all. So this is pretty exciting because anyone, that tries to research will find some really specific information, I think, on kind of nutritional recommendations and training adaptations and everything within the CrossFit space. It's very limited.
Yeah, so limited. I think we've probably got a lot of information about the similar types of stimulus and that, but I think it's still, at least down to the Gen Pod, there's still quite a big fear or not a realization about how important carbohydrates are to fuel high intensity performance. So if we can do anything to help people realize that it's going to help them get better and reduce injury risk, it'll be amazing.
Yeah, that's exciting. So have you found anything in terms of substrate utilization so far in the research?
No, and I would say, actually, having said all that, we've probably got, in terms of the, I guess, broader educational piece around carbohydrates and the importance of carbohydrates for fueling CrossFit, similar to how it's super important, obviously, for fueling combat sports, is that the people in our study are pretty good athletes and pretty well trained and have all been doing CrossFit for a pretty long time. So actually, they've got relatively similar diets to each other and relatively high carbohydrate diets, and tend to not train fasted because the time of day they train, just between the individuals who happen to have signed up for the study. So we possibly won't find too many interesting differences between them in that regard, because they're quite similar people. But we will see. I actually haven't dived into a lot of the data yet, because I don't want to internally bias my thinking until I've got kind of the whole population. So yeah, I've just kind of had a quick scan, and it's all the substrate utilization bit is fairly similar. The energetic responses. So when I say energetic responses, I mean which energy system, so whether someone's really aerobic or really anaerobic, has the bigger differences between individuals during the workouts. But I haven't looked at correlating that to how fast they were going and how heavy they were lifting yet.
I'll jump in, Dr. Roberts, because you said something here before we came online. You said that two people could do the same exercise, get the same result, but for different reasons. Can you just break that down?
Yeah, for sure. So again, kind of taking a sort of a typical CrossFit workout. So a common style of workout would be to have a set amount of time, so say 20 minutes, some form of workout, and you do it as many times as possible in that 20 minutes. So for example, a common one, so CrossFit has quite a lot of standard workouts that are named various things. So for example, one that comes to mind is a workout called Cindy, which is a 20-minute AMRAP, and it is 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 air squats, as many times as you possibly can. And you could have someone who does really well in that workout because they've got an amazing engine. So, you know, they get the whole way through and they're still breathing fine almost. So they get a really good score. And you could get someone who gets as good a score. Their engine's not that good, but they're really strong in their upper body. So actually the pull-ups and the push-ups don't tax them that much. So they can do really well for that reason. So you can have two people coming out with the same score, but one, it's just because it really hurt their muscles, but their lungs were fine. And the other person, their lungs were probably dying, but it wasn't that taxing, so they could keep going because they're super strong. So kind of just the performance or the score doesn't necessarily mean that the same thing was happening to each of those individuals during the workout. So if we can understand that a little bit more and understand where the, I guess, the important differences are in terms of getting a push or stimulus from your training to get fitter, faster, stronger, we can better personalize training programs in recovery and nutrition so that those individuals build on their strengths and address their weaknesses in the sport to an even better degree.
That's actually a really good point, because I think so true, you know, obviously it's hard unless you're a level athlete or you've got the time to train once or twice a day. The thing with CrossFit is like, yes, you're not only strong, but you have to be fit as well. And I think for myself, like coming back into CrossFit after doing a little bit of like trying to get into endurance and stuff, my engine at the moment is great. Like I can get through a workout, I'm not even puffed out at the end of it, but my muscles are just dying. So like, yeah, and it's crazy. Like, yes, you can still push through a workout, but at what quality? And you know how, obviously, yes, exercise isn't meant to be comfortable by any means, but yeah, you make a really good point, because yeah, myself and the next person could get through at the same time by having those different strengths. It is pretty interesting how it all works.
Yeah, so we're trying. So this is basically, I mean, hopefully I expect we will find this. But the idea from this study is to kind of go, look, this is really interesting. People are different. And then hopefully from there, obviously get sort of more funding to do more in-depth sort of research and start looking at kind of signaling and yeah, kind of what happens right at the granular level in the body. And yeah, this one's very much a kind of the sort of the gross level exercise physiology. So sort of, yeah, lung responses, blood responses, and strength responses.
This might be my ignorance to it. I know you guys both said that there's not a lot of research in this. And I guess it's the same for combat sports, right? It's not like there's like set qualities that we can look at and say, you'll be a good combat sport athlete. But I feel like, is there anything for CrossFit? I feel like it's been around for a while. Surely people have done VO2 max testing with these guys. They've done alactic threshold. They've done aerobic threshold. And they've got these. Could we not just make almost like a combine and be like, hey, you've got a great VO2 max, you've got a great AT1 or whatever, and then like put them through a strength combine and be like, you'll be a superstar and you're going to have to work power. Like, does that not exist in CrossFit or?
Not yet, really. So I think there's a few reasons for it. So one, because it's still a relatively new sport, so that sport's only really less than 20 years old. There's obviously not the I think as well, people are, it's quite a hard sport to test and do research in, because you're like, go test everything. And then thirdly, because so quite a lot of the studies out there aren't necessarily quite basic, because it's that kind of thing where you know it anecdotally, but you can't build your research on it until you've kind of proved the basics. So quite a lot of the initial research, like kind of, I guess, if you go back decades in other sports, is kind of this correlates with this. Like, you know, your 1 rep max on a lift correlates with doing a workout at a lighter weight with that same movement, which you kind of have to, I guess, get it down on paper and prove it first, so you can then use that to build. So it's quite a lot of very sort of basic studies. And I think because as well of the fact that it is almost everything, it's very hard to get enough studies that you could combine, for example, in a review or a meta-analysis and actually get any sense out of it, because they will just look at very different things. So to kind of get an overview. And then the next thing, which isn't just a CrossFit issue, or not issue, but challenge, is how well trained or not people in the studies are. So again, there are very few studies, or very few high quality studies, on what I would describe as well trained to the sort of elite athlete. A lot of it is on people who have never done CrossFit before, or they're stated as well trained, and then you realize actually they've only been doing CrossFit for 6 months or a year. And from an exercise physiology and metabolic perspective, you know, you're actually very well trained, strong towards elite athlete, and your beginner are very, very different. So and that's actually really important from the CrossFit perspective, where we're looking at a training style where you're bashing your lungs and your strength at the same time, because we think we know from classical studies looking at strength and cardio training at different times of day, is if you're a beginner, you can do both of those and improve a lot, because you're kind of starting from a base of nil. Whereas the more well trained you are, the harder it is to continue to get stronger and fitter at the same time. And that's the bit that's the really, I guess, confusing bit, or the bit we don't really understand in CrossFit. So we're basically lacking studies in your highly trained populations. So we don't really have a clear view of what goes on when your body's kind of already getting towards its, I know, its genetic limit, or the limit that it finds it easy to get to in terms of fitness. A lot of the studies are in those beginners where, you know, if you've never run, if you're completely sedentary and you start running building up to running a 5K, you'll get bigger muscles as well as getting a bigger lungs. But that doesn't mean the 5K is strength training. It's just because you're starting from a base of nil. So quite a lot of studies are kind of looking in that sort of a population where whatever they do, they will probably get stronger and they'll probably get fitter. Whereas we kind of want to look at the highly trained and say, well, you're already strong, you're already fit. How do we still keep both of these happening?
What's your hypothesis with the research? Do you have one that, okay, I think this type of training is going to be better for elite athletes, or this type of training is better for noobs, or what's the hypothesis you guys are running with?
So this study actually, it's purely observational, so we don't have a hypothesis in this one. I think what the study that I really want to do, but it's really expensive, so that's why we're doing this one first, to get people really interested in it, is so I think there's going to be, in terms of training responses and the acute response to workouts, I think there's going to be a big difference is going to come from, or the two biggest factors in whether someone can become stronger and fitter at the same time. I think two big variables in there are going to be your muscle fiber distribution, so type 1, type 2 fibers, and then also I think that a big aspect of concurrent training or limitations to getting stronger and fitter at the same time is resource availability. So I think it's going to come down to careful nutrition, because I think even looking at the research we've got around training strength and cardio at the same time, a lot of it could potentially be explained by a lack of nutrition or a lack of energy and building blocks in the muscle, because when you do exercise and, like we said, those signals are switched on in your muscle to grow more muscle or repair muscle or build more energetic machinery so you can produce the energy to do exercise, those signals will only stay on if your body actually has the fuel and the building blocks to kind of execute the directions that your muscles are telling it to. If you don't have those energy and building blocks, we know that those signals get switched off, because the body doesn't do things that it's going to waste resources, because signaling is still a resource in some way, when it can't get to the outcome, because that's just a waste of precious stuff in the body. So I think as some of the issues we've seen with that strength and cardio training is people crash and burn or don't get as fit or strong as they possibly can if their nutrition is inadequate, because their body's like, well, I'm not going to stay telling you to build muscle when you clearly don't have the energy or the building blocks to do that, for example. I'm just going to switch that signal off. So I think a lot of it does come down to that. But it's in the challenge then, and this I definitely don't know. Well, I mean, I don't even know that as an answer. That's just my hypothesis. But I think the challenge will then become, okay, well, how do we actually make sure that the muscles have the resources available at the right time? Like, what is the right time? What is the window of opportunity? And what does that mean for an intense training session where you've got both going on at the same time? Is waiting till the end of the training session too long? Have you already switched off the signals? Is there a dominant signal in there? Does that dominant signal differ between individuals depending how well trained they are or how on the edge they are with all the other stressors that are in their body at the time, from life or nutrition or poor sleep or the training they did earlier that week? So it's I guess that probably comes back to I've got no idea, but no, I personally think muscle fiber type, so someone's predisposition, which again can be trained, your muscle fiber type can be trained, but your propensity to more easily signal one way or the other in terms of further fitness adaptations, and then that resource availability bit, I think, are going to be two very, very important factors in how well you respond to strength and cardio training at the same time.
If you just take off your scientific hat and we'll drop them on the floor for a while and we'll go anecdotal and hypothetical, because I think that's way more interesting for what we're talking about, if there's no studies there. So if we're going back to that nutrition bit, then is it a case of underfueling total calories then to have those resources, or is it more a nutrient timing, or is it a combination of both, or what do you think? I don't care about the science. What do you think?
I think it's a combination of both, because you can definitely see if people have the same, people could eat the same amount, but say they do it all at once at the end of the day. In general, you will find, like, just from working with athletes on their nutrition, timing is a big factor, particularly both protein and carbohydrates. We always focus on protein in terms of timing, because obviously we can't store protein in the body, you use it or lose it, unlike fats and carbs, which, you know, if I eat too much in a meal, I obviously keep it in the body for use later on. Protein, you can't do that. So the implication is that obviously you need to eat it regularly if you're going to give your muscles a regular supply of protein, the building blocks to repair and recover. So we kind of, you know, that's a well-known paradigm, if you like. And carbohydrates obviously has that focus in endurance sports, but I don't think it has sufficient, that is a sufficient focus in other sports. And you definitely notice that in CrossFit as well. And it's twofold. It both is, for at least from experience, it's important both in people doing effective workouts that are going to get them the stimulus to get fitter, faster, stronger, because they've got the fuel to actually kill themselves to a high level rather than feel like they're killing themselves, but it's actually just because their fuel tank's empty. And then obviously in recovering rapidly afterwards as well. And you definitely, both of those factors, it's kind of like a feed forward loop, right? Like you see both of those factors, you can see people building much stronger functional muscle as a result, which is then going to enable them to push harder and then get fitter, faster, stronger, and so on. So it's that kind of perpetual improvement. But yeah, I think total amount, but actually I think timing is very underrated still in CrossFit.
Let's keep this train going, because I like this hypothetical anecdotal thing. If you were to, I don't know, jump in a time machine and go 2, 3, 4 years in the future and see the results of this, what do you think it is? If someone's just rocking up to CrossFit, I don't know, say they're moderately trained, I don't know if that makes this more complicated or not, and then they're like, I want to get as good as this as fast as possible. What do you think? Like, oh, and Loz, I'll throw this to you afterwards, because you'd know, being in the gym, seeing people do it and doing it yourselves. What are your thoughts, Dr. Roberts?
Yeah, I would say the three things that I think people should definitely should do, if I'm being hypothetical, that they maybe don't now, is intra-workout fueling. So carbohydrates during training sessions when people are doing like 2-hour sessions, not necessarily we're talking about, you know, your well-trained athlete here who might be doing 2-hour training sessions. Intra-workout carbs are underrated, and they need to be introduced, I think. Protein at the start and end of the day. That's close to the start of the day and as close to the end of the day as possible. And hydration. I think a lot of people underhydrate, and that reduces the quality of the training sessions because of concentration. Like you can definitely see people just kind of get a bit spaced. And I think that's so vital. You definitely see people who are poorly hydrated are more likely to just go wonky and get a bit injured. So yeah, that's straightforward.
That's probably not cold for you in the UK, but out here, you know, majority of CrossFit gyms are in a shed or in some massive warehouse. We don't have air conditioning. Come summer, you know, we live in Queensland. It's ridiculous. There's sweat covering the whole floor. Everyone's like passed out on the ground. It's yeah, I think there is a massive focus on hydration and intra-training nutrition in, say, endurance sports, but none of that for CrossFit. And yeah, those elite guys, even people I see at my gym that now used to just come and do a class, and now they're there from 4 till 7. You know, they're there all afternoon. I don't see them eat once most of the time. You know, maybe they'll go and have some BCAAs or something, but that's not a carbohydrate source. So I think, yeah, for these people that are wanting to get bigger, better, faster, stronger, if you're training in the gym for more than 60 minutes, you need to start eating. Because it's not normal. Like, you don't see people in a CrossFit gym eating. Like, if you did, you'd be like, what the heck are you doing? That's kind of weird. It's not normal in that space, I feel. So yeah, I totally agree. I think an increased awareness and I guess education in intra-training nutrition for CrossFit athletes would be really good. And, you know, obviously, yes, eating during workout is hard when you're running or riding, but if you're trying to eat and you're also doing muscle ups, or you're doing pull-ups, or you're doing handstand walks, you've also got that additional barrier then of like, okay, how do I eat but also not feel sick? So I guess, you know, timing that throughout what type of workout you'll be doing on the day as well.
Yeah, that gut training aspect, like you having endurance sports, I think definitely needs to be considered in CrossFit as well, particularly when you're doing that repeat performance, high intensity stuff where you're just like, I ate 2 hours ago and I still feel like I'm going to throw up. So it's kind of like planning your day more effectively as well. But actually that makes me think as well of it kind of taking it to the next level. Like if we think about the high level CrossFit competitions, they're multi-event, multi-day competitions. Even now, you will see a lot of the elite athletes eating through those competitions what you would consider to be, I hate using this word, but a day-to-day healthy diet. They won't necessarily be loading up on carbohydrates. They'll probably be having quite a lot of fiber. They'll probably be having quite a lot of fat. And really, it's always mind-blowing when you sort of say to them, I just kind of want you to eat a lot of sweets for the next 3 days. And kind of if you come out sort of a few 100 grams, half a kilo heavier, that's fine. It just means that your fuel stores have been topped up for the whole weekend. Like this is the time when we're just all about go, go, go. And there's even that lack of kind of understanding right at the elite level. So it's incredible what they can do actually.
Yeah, and I think, that comes from CrossFit itself. Like Geordie and I did a podcast a while back talking about the CrossFit nutrition recommendation and how it's really not targeted towards athletes. They're promoting a really healthy whole foods diet, and that's amazing for 80% of the time. But that 20% of the time before training, I feel like that nutrition recommendation and the way that CrossFit coaches or affiliate owners are kind of educated in nutrition is they have like this massive health approach, and they're almost like carb phobic in terms of they won't encourage lollies or cakes, or not necessarily cakes, but like those carbohydrates like white bread and all those things on a competition day. And yeah, you do see people like shoving down a normal meal, and you just think, no wonder you feel sick. We do need that awareness.
Yeah, like still the number of CrossFit gyms that also still have up on the wall the really old school, and I'm pretty sure CrossFit don't actively promote this anymore, but still have up on the wall. It's a very old school classic CrossFit poster, basically around kind of the paleo type diet. So it's got up there, no grains in your diet, pretty much sweet potato or potato. The pyramid one. And it's like, always eat whole foods. Obviously we do promote that as a general rule for most people, but some seeds, some nuts, no grains. Pretty much the only complex carbs that this poster allows is potato and sweet potato, which obviously if you're doing a lot of high intensity training, that is going to be very hard to meet your carbohydrate requirements with fruit, vegetables and potato.
Last question, Dr. Roberts, before I let you go and get back to your day. That's the nutrition side. What about the training side? Someone rocked up and they were like, hey, what type of training should I do to get best bang for my buck? Is it a case of, do they just do the sport specific? Like, I don't know, these Murph, Cindy's and Louis or whatever you guys call them. Do they just do all of them? Or is it worthwhile for them to like be like, I'm not as strong. Maybe I should just go in the gym and just hit some bench and some deadlift on top of that? Or what's the best way for them to go about it?
I think it depends. So I think if you're completely starting out, now this is obviously assuming that your gym has a sensible program. But I guess if you're just starting out, doing anything will get you a little bit better at everything. Then I would say for most people, for a good period of time, at least a few years, again, this is going to be very, very gym dependent, because all gyms will do their own programming or buy a commercial programming. So assuming your gym has someone writing the program who is a very, very good at exercise physiology, you can go very far often within an in-gym program. Again, assuming the coaching and programming is good. But then, if you're at that point where you're like, I am not improving, I'm sort of just holding steady, then yeah, that might be the time to say, okay, well, what do I actually need to improve on? And I would generally, for probably a lot of people, say talk to someone about it, because as with everything, we usually don't have great self-awareness about what we need to most work on. And depending how elite you want to get, that might mean actually you do some testing on exercise physiology. So you work out, your muscle fiber type distribution, or you work out your aerobic capacity or your anaerobic capacity and your strength. You get someone to, look at you doing workouts and be like, okay, why are they dying in this? And then either choose a program or find a coach who will program for you to address your specific weaknesses, depending what your goal is and over what time frame.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's pretty much at time, but what an episode, eh? I thought we were just going to nerd out for a while, but I think that's epic. I think let's rebook this for 6 months. Is 6 months going to be enough time to get some more data, and then we'll discuss it? Because even my conversations with Loz, right? And I think it's just every sport, right? It's like the thing I've realized, like jumping across a couple of sports and then going really deep into it, is that once you're in there and you kind of are science minded, you realize how much we don't know about it, right? And we give out so many recommendations, and we're like, oh, well, you've got to do this, but maybe you should do this as well, but also eat this way, but not too much. And it's interesting. CrossFit, as popular it is, that's one thing Loz has kind of opened my eyes to, is that not that it's a wild, wild west, but there's really not a lot behind it. So it's really cool that we're seeing this research. Loz, anything you want to ask or finish off on?
No, I think that's interesting, and thanks for like pulling me in at the last minute. I just think, you know, one of those points you said before about you know, like you can, as a beginner, you can come in and you can start and get like better pretty fast. It's so true. You know, you come into CrossFit, and when I did it, I was the same, and new people will be like to me, oh, does it ever get easier? And to be honest, it never gets easier, because like your fitness, your strength just keeps improving to a point that, you know, you're no longer scaling, you're RXing, you're doing normal weights. So I think, yeah, that mentality of like, okay, what type of training is going to get me the fittest and the strongest? I feel like you're never going to be the fittest and the strongest, because with CrossFit, that like sky's the limit in terms of how good we can be.
It's endlessly frustrating and fun.
All right. Dr. Roberts, if people are listening to this and they want to reach out to you, feed, fuel, perform, or they just want to chat to you, or they want to learn more about all this stuff, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Probably Instagram. So my Instagram is Sinead.feedfuelperform. Sorry, I have to think about that for a second. Sinead.feedfuelperform, and our website is feedfuelperform.com.
What if they're listening to this and they're like, you know what, I'm in the UK and I'd like to be a CrossFit guinea pig and I want to get involved with this? Is there a way for them to do that?
Yes, please. Yeah, so any males aged 18 to 39 who have a 1 rep max clean that is above 100 kilos can do 10 strict chest to bar and 10 strict handstand push-ups. Get in touch. We are based in London, but we are also doing travel out to gyms. So yeah, if you drop me a message on Instagram, I'll be able to send you more details and get you involved.
Did you just say 100 kilo clean?
Yes, these are pretty well trained athletes. Yeah.
I was gonna say I don't think I could even look at 100 kilos on the ground anymore. But anyway, we'll wrap that one up there. We'll put links in the show notes and everything. But Dr. Sinead, thanks so much for coming on and making the time.
No, thanks for having me. Great to chat.
Loz, thanks for jumping on last minute.
Thanks, guys.